Good evening. I am Ron Rael of the High Road Institute. I'm a member of the National Speakers Association, and I would describe myself as the accidental expert. I would love to be in front of you tonight. However, when clients call, we have to go. And so I'm in St. Louis while you are in Seattle. However, this is the presentation that I would give to you. The only thing you're missing is the opportunity to ask me questions. You can always email me any questions afterwards. Allow me to tell you my story of how I became the accidental expert. I started my career in the accounting profession. Yes, I am an accountant. In fact, I'm a CPA, which in case you didn't know stands for constant pain in the wallet. To make a long story short, I had a successful career there, and during my last couple of years I was asked to do training sessions on accounting related topics. I enjoyed the process. When I left public accounting and went into private industry as a controller, then a treasurer, and then a CFO, I realized that there was not a lot of courses for the job that I did. There were plenty of tax and auditing and accounting classes, but nothing for the controller, for the industry accountant, as we are named. In 1988, the national organization contacted me, the American Institute of CPAs, asked me if I would do a class for them on today's controller. That's exactly what I was doing. I had a good understanding of the job, and so I did it on my own time. It was successful. I got good feedback, and I learned two things. I wanted to do more of those, and my speaking skills sucked. I don't like that word. They hoovered. So I joined Toastmasters. Then in 1992, 1993, when I had a career crisis, not knowing what I wanted to do, someone asked me a critical question. Ron, what would you want to do and love doing even if you didn't get paid? Out of my mouth popped speaking. That was the first time I acknowledged that I wanted to be a professional speaker. I joined National Speakers Association, and it was like coming home. This was my tribe, people exactly like me. However, at the time, I had no clue as to what I wanted to speak about. I just knew I had this desire to give presentations. Right after that, I was contacted by my old profession, the CPAs, and they said, "We've heard that you have done some classes for the industry accountant. Would you be interested in developing some courses for us?" So for the Washington State Society of CPAs, I developed a 4-hour course on teaming. Notice it has nothing to do with accounting, but everything about the job that I had done, which was to be a team leader. It was successful. They came back and said, "Do you have another course?" And that continued for several years, up to the point where I developed over 50 courses in my personal catalog. I not only did them locally here in Washington, I did them in Oregon, and eventually across the United States. Now the interesting thing is my workbooks at that time were anywhere between 20 and 50 pages for 8 hours of material. And in my workbooks, I had a lot of white space, a lot of opportunity to take notes, fill in the blanks. I also broke the content into what I call principles and rules, small sound bites of the content. In fact, I developed an expertise in the short sentences long before Twitter came up with the 140 character limit that is now in place. And so basically what happened is that when people showed up, they got my information, but they couldn't just read it in the book. It was proprietary to me. In 2004, the national organization, the AICPA, contacted me and said, "Ron, we'd like to put you out of business." What they really meant was they felt that I could work better. It'd be better if I worked for them as opposed to against them. And so they said, would you take your courses and do them for us? Now I'm the type of individual that I walk through any open door, even if I have no clue as to what I'm supposed to do, and I did. I asked, "Well, how much material do you want?" And they said, "Over 200 pages. 25 pages per clock hour for 8-hour courses." I'm not a writer. In fact, English was probably the worst subject I had in high school and college. However, I was committed. And so I pitched to them the idea of developing a course on risk management. I had developed a 4-hour course on the topic. They said yes. And so I sat down in front of a computer and also in front of a recorder, and as if I was giving the live presentation, I just dictated it and did this for hours. And before I knew it, I had a book. So here it is, Smart Business Risk Management. Over 200 pages. Once I completed that and sold it to them, they said, what's next? Another course that I had developed on my own was about management reporting, real-world management reporting. And so they said, okay, go ahead and write that one. So that next year was my next course. Management reporting, creating world-class reports. This one is nearly 400 pages. They said, what's next? I had had a particular job. It was my last time I was a controller and CFO, serving as a contractor. I was not an employee for the company, but I was under contract. And it was an interesting experience. It was a great experience. I learned a lot. I also discovered that there were no classes, no books, nothing existed on how to be successful in that role. The door opened, I walked through it, and I developed how to succeed as the part-time contract controller. It became very popular and a lot of people attended the courses. I also had developed another course in my repertoire of sessions that I had done for CPAs, and it was about the loss of time and money. Everybody was complaining, we've got to cut expenses, we have to be able to be more profitable, and I came up with an idea for a really cool name for the course called Plug Your Profit Leaks. And I sold it to the AICPA. Exploring ideas to significantly save time and money. And so what I realized was when the check started rolling in for royalties, I was amazed because I not only got paid when I presented my material, if anybody else presented my material, I got paid as well. I also received a royalty for the people that attended and took the course, and I also received royalties when people downloaded it for self-study. So I continued to develop more courses, and doors kept opening. Another topic area that I noticed that there was not a lot of information was business budgeting. In fact, the only course that existed for CPAs was a very basic course for somebody with less than 6 months worth of experience, and more importantly, it focused on just the mechanics, spreadsheet type elements of budgeting. So I pitched to my client about developing a series of courses on budgeting. My first one was budgeting from A to Z, a very basic about all the elements of budgeting. And then a second one was tricks and traps of budgeting. Then I came up with a course that was more advanced. In fact, it's described as intermediate, titled Critical Skills for Budgeting Success. Became very popular. In fact, it is still in print, still being used over a decade later. Another one I came up with, best practices in budgeting. I also realized there was no advanced material at all. So then I developed, guess what? Advanced skills for the budget manager. Smart and profitable planning. Now this one is developed for not just the CFO or controller, but also the entire leadership team. How to conduct a budget planning session. How to have a successful planning retreat. And so basically I kept churning out these books. But again, all this time as I'm doing my writing, I'm still not sure exactly what my expertise is. However, when I look back, I realized I had become an expert in corporate culture. And corporate culture was in everything that I wrote. I became an expert in accountability. Accountability was something in every one of my books. Change management, people management, risk management. And so I became an expert in all those subtopics as it related not only to the accounting profession, but to the world outside as well. But I still didn't have a clue as to what my expertise was. It was probably approximately 2008, I came up with a concept for an advanced version of the controller's class that I had done before, and it would be called advanced skills for the controller and CFO. Now what's amazing about this was about leadership. It was not about the technical part of the job. And I saw a new perspective, and that is that the controller and CFO is a leader first, a technician second. No one else said that. No one else talked about that. And then finally, in 2010, I really made a leap of faith. And I pitched to my client, I said, you don't have a course on leadership, pure leadership. I'm willing to write one for you. And they said, go ahead. And that became Leadership Update. This is the first version issued in 2010. And the reason the word update is there is because my goal was to make it change every year. The first 4 chapters are consistent. They're about basic leadership from the CPA's perspective. The rest of the book would be changed every year. Every year I pick a specific topic area and specific issues. I interviewed CPAs who were leaders and told their story. In 2011, I decided to write about women and leadership. My male friends who knew me said, Ron, do not write about women leadership. No one likes a man's perspective on women. I went ahead and did it and became very popular. Basically, I just explained that women leadership is a little bit different and their point of view is a little different, but leadership should be genderless. Your sex has nothing to do with whether you're a good leader or not. And so I noticed that in every one of my books, I had a new perspective. And that's where, now let's come back to you, because you have a perspective, you have a point of view, and more importantly, you are an expert. You've accomplished some great things, and the world needs your knowledge. The world needs solutions. They want to know how to solve their problems, and you know how. So you can write a book. In fact, you probably have more than one book. What I suggest is go back to everything you've written, blogs and articles and anything else, and put them in a notebook, whether it's a real three-ring binder or a digital notebook, and start putting them together. And over time, you'll see the formation of a book. Then go through, create a table of contents, add the content that is missing, tell some stories, and voila, you have a book. And today it's so easy. You just go to Amazon, sign up, send them your manuscript, and in 2 days or less, your book will be in the Amazon system, or on the Kindle system if you just want to do an ebook. So you have a book in you. I know it, because you are an expert. Well, let me continue my story. So then all these books were out there, and then the AICPA came back to me and said, Ron, you know that course that you wrote on risk management? Could you tweak it a little bit, get rid of all the training aspect and turn it into a real book that we can sell in our bookstore? And boom, Smart Risk Management became an off-the-shelf book. They came back 2 years later and said, we'd like to do another version. Would you write more about smart risk management? And this was a guide to identifying and collaborating business risks. A couple years ago, they came back to me and said, Ron, there's now this new designation called the CGMA, the Certified General Management Accountant, and we need materials for this course. And it would be eligible for people around the world to take this course and, more importantly, get the accreditation. And so they took my material and I wrote a newer version of it, Strategy and Risk Management, and it's written not only in British English, which is very interesting to read. I added a story throughout. So there's a story of a case study that runs throughout the book about that. That course I wrote for the contract controller. The AICPA came back and said, can we make it into a standalone book? Again, getting rid of all the training aspects of it and just pure content. I said, sure, go ahead. And so that's how I've been able to develop 17 of my 19 books. Most recently, I finally made a commitment to stop writing just for the CPA marketplace and to get known outside of that. And so I'm very proud that in 2015 I published The Reluctant Leader, Own Your Responsibility with Courage. Because as I've spoken to over 13,000 leaders in the United States and Canada, I realized there was a syndrome, and it's called the Reluctant Leader Syndrome. We have a lot of people who don't own the label of leadership. They don't like the title, they don't like the responsibilities, or they're very poor leaders. So I wrote this book, and it's basically a parable. It's a story of a reluctant leader and how she got herself into trouble and how she was able to find the leadership within herself. My most recent publication, which was published last week, is also about leadership, and it combines the topic of budgeting in it. So it's 95% leadership, 5% budgeting. And it's a Kindle book. It's titled Leadership, the Missing Ingredient, or the Key Ingredient for a Great Budget. Now again, I don't see myself as a writer, but I guess I know how to write. And I guess my first realization came early in my career. After I joined National Speakers Association, I was asked to be part of an anthology. An anthology was a book idea conceptualized by someone who would get all these experts together and write a chapter. In 2002, this would be my first book. I wrote a chapter in this book called Fantastic Customer Service, Inside and Out. And it was a chapter about the internal customer service, something that was often neglected. As I wrote it, I saw an interesting point of view that nobody else had talked about, and that is this. Customer service on the outside is only effective as the service on the inside. So if teams, departments don't support one another and provide great service, it doesn't matter what the company does outside, service will not be as good as it could be. I also realized in budgeting I had a very different perspective that nobody else had, and that is that budgeting is easy. It is everything else that makes it seem hard. That everything else is lack of accountability, lack of discipline, leaders who like to play games, leaders who cheat, leaders who have hidden agendas. And so I bring this back to you because you have a fantastic point of view and you may not have realized it, and I guarantee it will come out as you start writing, and I know that you can do it. Today there's so many tools, so many resources that you can have a book published in a short amount of time and you can become that expert. So my hope for you is that you won't be reluctant, you won't be accidental, you'll be more intentional. The handout that you received, which shares my 13 and a half lessons learned by the accidental expert. And by the way, that's one of my trademarks, the half. What does it mean? I can show you, a member of the audience, a person reading my book, all the best information, give you great insights, deliver fantastic tools, but who has to walk through that door? Who has to take that final half step? That's you. So allow me to close my presentation with my 13th and a half lesson learned from the accidental expert, and it is this. Being a thought leader in one thing is more lucrative than being knowledgeable in many things. Your job is to find that one thing. Thank you very much for your time and attention. I hope to see you at a future event. And by the way, Dean Jan tells me you're doing a fantastic job. So thank you very much.